For nearly 2 decades, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban appeared untouchable, the golden couple who seemed to have outsmarted Hollywood's cruel odds. She was the elegant Oscar-winning actress with a quiet grace. He, the country musician whose songs carried the ache of redemption. Together, they were the proof that love could survive fame, that two wounded souls could build something eternal. But in 2025, that illusion finally shattered. Within days of Keith's quiet move out of their Nashville home, Nicole filed for divorce. And what followed was a tidal wave of truth. Years of silence breaking open, revealing the pain she had hidden behind every red carpet smile, behind the photographs, the laughter, and the perfectly rehearsed vows lay a story of exhaustion, betrayal, and a woman who finally decided to stop protecting the man who had stopped fighting for her. For almost 20 years, the world saw them as Hollywood's rare success story, a marriage that somehow balanced glamour with humility, artistry with devotion. But what the cameras never caught was the fragile heartbeat beneath the surface. Their love, like so many great romances born under blinding lights, began in magic and ended in quiet heartbreak. They met in 2005 at the G'day USA Gala in Los Angeles, a celebration of Australian talent far from home. Nicole was 38, still glowing from her Oscar win for The Hours, yet privately haunted by her painful divorce from Tom Cruise and the loss of daily contact with her two adopted children, Isabella and Connor. She had rebuilt her career, her poise, her public image, but not her sense of family. Keith Urban, a year younger, was a rising star of country music, talented, charming, and quietly broken. His songs carried the pain of a man running from his own demons. Years of struggling with substance abuse had left scars that fame couldn't erase. To the world, they were opposites, but to each other, they were mirrors, two lonely hearts searching for safety in the same storm. Their connection was instant, but not impulsive. Keith took months to call her after that first meeting, later admitting he had been too intimidated by her presence. When he finally reached out, their bond formed fast and deep, a collision of vulnerability and hope. By June 2006, they were married in a candlelit ceremony at St. Patrick's Estate in Sydney. Nicole glowed in her Balenciaga gown. Keith sang softly to her during the reception, his voice trembling with love. The night was intimate, tender, the kind of wedding people called a fairy tale written in gold. But as every fairy tale knows, the magic always fades when the lights go out. Just 4 months later, Keith checked himself into rehab for alcohol addiction. Nicole was blindsided. Instead of walking away, she chose compassion. She visited him in treatment, shielded him from the tabloids, and told friends that love meant forgiveness. In truth, she was fighting for something far deeper, a second chance at family, at redemption, at not losing another home to heartbreak. Over the years that followed, Nicole worked tirelessly to keep the illusion alive. Keith thanked her publicly at award shows, his voice cracking as he called her his saving grace. She smiled through it all, returning the praise, calling him the man who brought me back to life. In 2008, their first daughter, Sunday Rose, was born. 2 years later came Faith Margaret. To the outside world, their story was perfect. Hollywood's disciplined queen and Nashville's wild heart finally finding peace in each other. But behind closed doors, cracks began to show. Keith's relentless touring, the ghosts of addiction, and Nicole's constant fear of losing another husband quietly corroded the bond between them. She waited for phone calls that never came. He drowned his exhaustion in work, in distance, in the noise of another crowd. Nicole remained graceful, patient, endlessly forgiving. But even grace has limits, and as the years passed, the fairy tale everyone envied was no longer shining. It was fading, slowly, painfully, beautifully, into silence. By their 10th anniversary, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban had already survived what would have broken most couples: addiction, distance, fame, and relentless public scrutiny. But surviving isn't the same as living. Somewhere along the way, their love became a performance, a perfectly rehearsed act for the cameras and the world that needed to believe in them. On red carpets, they held hands like teenagers. In interviews, they spoke in harmony, finishing each other's sentences. "We've never been stronger," Keith would say. "She's my rock," Nicole would smile. The world believed them. But behind those glowing words lay a quiet exhaustion. A woman carrying the weight of a marriage that no longer carried her back, and a man growing restless in a life that demanded he be someone he no longer recognized. Nicole's world revolved around order, family routines, school runs, carefully structured filming schedules. Stability, to her, was sacred. It was something she had lost once with Tom Cruise, and she refused to lose again. Keith's world, however, thrived on chaos: late-night studio sessions, tours that blurred into months on the road, endless temptations that followed every stage light. He was a man of motion. She was a woman of stillness. They tried to bridge the gap. Rules were made: never go more than 2 weeks apart, always talk before bed, always say goodnight. But real life has a way of eroding rules. Calls went unanswered. Goodnights faded into a silence. Promises slipped through the cracks of busy schedules. By the mid-2010s, their love had become a brand, something magazines could print, something fans could hold up as proof that love conquers all. "Hollywood's last real marriage," one headline read. But even fairy tales need an audience, and theirs had become too crowded. At award shows, Keith would kiss her shoulder for the cameras, whispering something sweet that never reached his eyes. Nicole would smile, her face composed in that familiar, flawless grace. But those close to them noticed the tension, the pauses between words, the way she seemed to flinch at moments that once felt natural. To friends, it was painfully clear she was tired of being his anchor. To him, her calm control felt like a cage. The man she once saved now wanted freedom. The woman who once found peace in him now felt trapped inside the very love that once healed her. By 2023, whispers began to ripple through Hollywood and Nashville, quiet suggestions that the couple were living separate lives. He was away more often than home, while she buried herself in her work. Yet even then, Nicole refused to give up. She had already lost 2 children to distance before. She would not lose 2 more to silence. But silence has a way of growing louder when 2 hearts stop speaking the same language. And for Nicole and Keith, that silence became deafening. By early 2024, the cracks that once hid beneath polished smiles could no longer be ignored. The illusion was crumbling, slowly, quietly, and completely. Nicole Kidman was in London filming Practical Magic 2 alongside Sandra Bullock. Those close to her noticed a shift, her laughter a little softer, her eyes often lost in thought. When she spoke of Keith, it was in the past tense, as if something inside her already knew. Back in Nashville, Keith Urban had quietly rented a separate home. Officially, it was just for space to think. In truth, that space had already swallowed their marriage whole. He had stopped calling, stopped showing up, stopped trying. For months, Nicole believed it was another rough patch, one of many they had overcome before. When tabloids questioned her about their marriage, she smiled gently and said, "Marriage takes work. We're both committed." But commitment, by then, had become one-sided. Keith was distant, living his life on the road, surrounded by lights, music, and noise loud enough to drown out guilt. She was alone, waiting for a call that never came, holding on to a hope that was already gone. By June 2024, their lives no longer intersected. Nicole lived on set, working long hours to escape her thoughts. Keith toured through crowded arenas, singing songs that no longer belonged to her. The last time they appeared together in public was at a Nashville soccer match on June 20th. They sat side by side, their bodies close, but their souls oceans apart. Witnesses said they looked awkward, like two actors forced to perform in a play whose ending they already knew. That night, Keith made his decision. Without confrontation, without a final conversation, he quietly packed his belongings and left their Nashville home. When Nicole returned from London weeks later, she walked into an empty house, his guitars gone, his closet bare, the silence thick enough to break her heart. There was no note, no goodbye, only absence. For a woman who had built her entire world on the idea that love could survive anything, that silence was unbearable. Yet even in heartbreak, she remained composed. She refused to let her story dissolve into chaos. Then came the whispers, rumors of another woman from Keith's touring crew. Whether true or not, the pain was real. Nicole had spent years forgiving, defending, and protecting him. Now, for the first time, she chose herself. When the news broke in late September that Nicole Kidman had officially filed for divorce, the public assumed she was the one ending things. But those close to her knew the truth. She wasn't walking away. She was simply closing a door that had already been left open. Her filing wasn't revenge, it was survival. When Nicole Kidman filed for divorce on September 30th, 2025, the world gasped. 19 years of marriage, 2 daughters, and countless red carpet memories, all distilled into 2 quiet words: irreconcilable differences. On paper, it looks simple. In truth, it was anything but. Those close to Nicole say she had wrestled with the decision for months, clinging to the hope that Keith might change his mind, that he might finally come home. But he didn't. By the time she filed, he had already signed his portion of the papers weeks earlier. His silence, once comforting, now final. What made it worse was the timing. Her filing came just 24 hours after the world learned Keith had officially moved out of their Nashville home. To outsiders, it looked like a perfectly orchestrated response, a Hollywood headline. To those who knew her, it was heartbreak disguised as a strength. She wasn't angry, one insider told Woman's Day. She was just done. She'd been fighting for years while he'd already stopped. And yet, even in that moment, Nicole chose dignity. The divorce documents revealed her priorities, her daughters, Sunday Rose, now 17, and Faith Margaret, 14. Nicole requested primary residential custody, 306 days a year. Keith would have them for 59. She asked for no spousal support, no child support. Both had fortunes of their own. For Nicole, it was never about money, it was about peace. But Keith's reaction stunned everyone. Just days after the filing, he stepped onto a stage in Pennsylvania. No wedding ring, no trace of the fighter, the love song he had once dedicated to her. Instead, He performed one of his breakup anthems, quietly altering the lyrics. Take your space, he sang, and take your reasons to take your unreasonable reasons. The crowd fell silent. They understood. It was his message to her, raw, defensive, and public. For the first time, the man she had protected for nearly 2 decades was painting himself as the victim, rewriting the story on his own stage. Nicole, meanwhile, said nothing, no statements, no interviews, just quiet composure. The woman who had rebuilt her life after Tom Cruise was now forced to watch her second great love collapse before the entire world. She didn't fight back. She didn't correct the narrative. She simply carried her pain with grace, the same way she had carried the marriage. Behind the silence, however, those close to her say she was devastated, not because she lost him, but because she had tried so hard to save something he'd already abandoned. For years, she had protected him from his demons. In the end, it was those same demons that took him away. In the weeks after the divorce became public, something inside Nicole Kidman shifted. For nearly 2 decades, she had mastered the art of silence, polished interviews, serene smiles, graceful deflections. But this time, she stopped pretending. No carefully worded statements, no family photos staged for sympathy, just silence, followed by quiet honesty. In a Vogue cover story published on October 9th, just before the split was announced, the interviewer described her as wry, fragile, unsure of herself. When asked how she felt in this new stage of life, Nicole looked down for a moment and said softly, "Sometimes life teaches you the same lesson over and over that you think you know where it's going, and then it isn't." It was a small confession, but it spoke volumes. Friends later revealed that she had already known the marriage was over when she said those words. She had held out hope until the very end, even after Keith's quiet move, even after whispers of another woman in his touring crew. "She's heartbroken," one friend told Daily Mail, "but she's still in love with him. She would take him back in a heartbeat." Even after everything at the distance, the betrayal, the silence, she couldn't turn off the love. But love wasn't enough anymore. The same loyalty that once defined her had become her prison. Insiders confirmed that Keith had been emotionally absent for months before he left. While she was filming in London, he had already packed his things, signed the divorce papers, and moved out of their Nashville estate without a word. When she returned, it was like stepping into a ghost house. His guitars gone, his scent fading, his absence deafening. It was like someone took a sledgehammer to her entire world, one insider said. Still, Nicole refused to lash out, as rumors swirled of Keith's flirtations with younger musicians and 2 friendly stage moments. She remained silent. No social media posts, no denials, no bitterness. But through friends, a different story began to emerge. One of a woman who had carried a marriage far longer than she should have, who forgave more than she ever admitted, and who finally ran out of pieces to give. Her silence was no longer submission. It was just strength. By late October 2025, the headlines had begun to fade. The frenzy that once surrounded Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's split had moved on to newer scandals. But silence can speak louder than any headline, and Nicole's silence was deafening. She was seen in Nashville walking hand in hand with her daughters, her expression calm but unreadable. Gone was the polished movie star, always ready for the cameras. What remained was something far more human, a mother, a survivor, a woman finally reclaiming her own peace. Those close to her said she had stopped asking why he left. She had finally accepted the truth that haunted her for months. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. For the first time in years, Nicole stopped being the caretaker, the rescuer, the perfect wife. She began learning how to simply be herself again. In quiet conversations with friends, she admitted that the hardest part wasn't losing Keith. It was realizing he had given up long before she did. She had fought until the very end, believing love, patience, and forgiveness could still fix what fame had broken. But when she discovered that he had already planned his exit, she understood it was truly over. What hurt most wasn't the end. It was the way he had used their story. Insiders claimed that Nicole believed Keith had drawn inspiration from their private arguments and text messages for songs on his 24 album, High and Alive. When she confronted him, he didn't deny it. He simply stayed silent. And in that silence, she found her answer. Yet, despite everything, Nicole Kidman refused to retaliate. She could have exposed him, could have revealed every secret she'd kept for nearly 2 decades, but she didn't. Grace had always been her armor, and even in heartbreak, she wore it beautifully. Instead, she focused on her daughters and her work, on protecting the peace she had fought so hard to build. She chose to stay in Nashville so her girls could finish school without upheaval. Her only request in the divorce, 306 custody days a year, wasn't about control, it was about love. To those who have known her for decades, Nicole's heartbreak felt achingly familiar. She once lost her family after her divorce from Tom Cruise. Now, she had lost another great love. But this time, she wasn't running away. She was standing still, facing the pain, owning it, and transforming it into quiet defiance. The perfect Hollywood marriage was gone, but in its place stood something far more real, a woman who had finally stopped protecting the man who broke her heart. Nicole Kidman once said softly, "You can't control life, you can only live it." And perhaps in finally letting go, she has learned how to live again. Do you think Nicole made the right choice by finally walking away? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more true Hollywood stories.